often in this buzzword of empowering women is like that's actually very sometimes condescending or patronizing, as if like women are not enough and we need to give them an extra hand so that they can
Yeah.
generate the same result that men would generate.
If you as a human being don't believe that you have agency over your decisions,
Mm,
then there's going to be this conversation going on with you that the power is somewhere sitting outside of you. And then that means that we then look at all of these different ways that we can kind of fix the problem for women. But if we
yeah.
innately recognize that we actually have it within us to choose and choose very powerfully, how does that
Yeah.
change things for us?
Hello, everyone. Another episode, and I have today Jeanette Mundy with me, one of the great people in our community who mainly focuses on working with women. Jeanette, introduce yourself to the people who are listening to us or watching us on YouTube.
Hello, thanks, Ashkan. My name is Jeanette Mundy. I am a leadership coach and I predominantly work with women around who and how they're being in leadership. So I've got a real interest in supporting women to become leaders, not only in their own life, but then in how they want to take themselves out into the world, what they want to do in the world, how they express themselves. My background is in learning and development. I used to own a small business and I've done a lot of work with leaders within organizations. But now, independently of that, I'm out into the world just really expressing this conversation around women. And I'm really fascinated with women in leadership and how we actually take ourselves out into the world as leaders. And I think it's a really important thing that women become the leaders in their own life and then just can freely go out and express themselves in however that is for them.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Janet. Thank you. So, from the beginning, like as I was hearing what you were saying, I mean, this is great. Like we're hearing that a lot. Like, for example, universities and academia in the corporate realm, many of the communications we receive from the government keeps reiterating terms like empowering women, women in leadership, women in tech. Yeah, to the point that like sometimes some of us we don't really understand what does that mean, and it's like a kind of a buzzword that some may not necessarily relate to it as what it originally meant to be. Yeah, so you tell me, when you're talking about empowering women, when you're talking about women being leaders in their life, what do you exactly mean? You know, like, are you just repeating whatever is constantly being said everywhere else? Or, I mean, like, how do you relate to that?
Oh, good question. So, look, I think it is a buzzword. Empowering women or empowering anyone is a buzzword, and it actually loses its context. It can lose its
Yeah.
context. It can lose its efficiency. But I think what I see in women is this massive confusion, and the confusion is: who am I? What is my value? Who do I want to be? Who should I be? And so because we're in an effort to really um, provide opportunities for women in all kinds of areas in life, and that's not a bad thing. It's a really great thing.
Yeah.
Women are still kind of stuck in this notion that they have all these definite, female expectations. Who do I have to be? I have to be a really good mother. I have to look a certain way. I have to present a certain way.
Mm.
I have to be nice. I have to be friendly. I have to be nurturing. And so
Mhm.
there's this real context around who women think that they should be. And it's everywhere. It's everywhere in society, and it's getting us away from the innate value that we already have that's within
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, see, like I still would like us to stay there a little bit more, because I'm pretty sure there would be people that they really enjoy that opening, and there will be people that may not necessarily resonate with that. Go, oh, again, another person is showing up talking about women empowerment, talking about like so. Why do you think that still there are matters unaddressed? Like, for example, if you look into the first wave of feminism, first and the second waves of feminism, then we could grasp it, we could understand it. Like women wanted to be leading their own lives, people, women wanted to have vote, and that's understandable. Yeah, but then when
Mm.
it comes to today's world, where women are basically like they already have all of these rights that traditionally was not being given to them. Yeah, so why is it that you think that still there is something that specifically we need to address in order for women to feel empowered?
Mm. Well, well, I think for women, we if we can just remove the word empowered for a minute and
Hmm.
put that to the side, because I think it is a buzzword. So if we can just come
Yeah.
back to that, we have always had specific women have always had specific roles, right? So we
Yeah.
can't get away from the fact that we have the ability to have a child, and that
Hmm.
with that ability then there comes a lot of choices that we have to make.
Yeah.
And so we're always faced with having to make certain choices in our life,
Yeah.
just as men are. But for women specifically, we having to make a choice as to whether we go and we have a child, and whether we then bring that child up in the home, or whether we go out and have a career, and then we take ourselves into the workforce, and then where does that leave us on the home front?
Yeah.
So we've got all these choices that we have to make. And
Yes.
I think we're in a world where those choices they're out there for us. We can actually choose. It's there for us,
Yeah.
but sometimes we're feeling as though we don't have those choices are taken away from us. I feel like women have got this, they've got agency over their own life, but sometimes we don't believe we've got agency. And so we
Yeah.
feel, yeah.
And do you think that like that lack of that lack of the feeling of agency, do you think that that's a systematic thing that then you need to go in and address it, or it goes back to the integrity of the individuals?
Well, I think both, actually. I think it goes back. Firstly, let's talk about the integrity of the individual for a
Yeah.
minute. If you as a human being don't believe that you have agency over your decisions,
Hmm.
then there's going to be this conversation going on with you that the power is somewhere sitting without outside of you,
Yeah.
that you have to try. Yeah. And then that means that we then look at all of these different ways that we can kind of fix the problem for women. But if we
Yeah.
innately recognize that we actually have it within us to choose, and choose very powerfully, how does that
Yeah.
change things for us? And then how do we see ourselves? But let's talk systemically for a minute too, because
Mhm.
there are messages out there for women. There are definitely
Yeah.
societal messages that tell us that we've got to look a certain way. Now, tell us that we've got these beauty lenses that we often look at ourselves
Yeah.
through, look at social media, it's all there, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at, if we can just get back to being who we are innately, if we can just kind of look at our value and value ourselves from the inside out, then how does that change
Mhm.
the way we look at those things that are happening in society? How do we
Sure.
relate to them? I think that's the conversation is here, is how are we relating to those messages?
So see, like when we're talking about systematic, yeah. So do you believe that we're living in a patriarchy still?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I don't know. I think what I believe is that there is we probably are living in a patriarchy, and yet
Mhm.
I believe that um, some of the patriarchal views and opinions have a valid and have validity. So I don't really have a huge opinion on that. Only that for women, if we then look at that we're living in a patriarchy, and then we start to look and blame the patriarchy for
Mhm.
for the problems that we're facing, I think we're
Yeah,
missing the whole. I think we're missing a huge opportunity.
sure,
So the
sure.
opportunity is for us to say, look, these that things have sat outside of our control, and
Mhm.
things have been implemented that are patriarchal. But where does that leave us if we're just giving over our power to that? It doesn't make
Mm.
sense to me to do that. So I know for
Yeah.
me personally, it's not something that I really focus my attention on. I know that I need to have a conversation with myself about how I value me.
Yeah, so when for example you mentioned the beauty standard, yeah. So do you
Mm.
think that like there are still like men that are setting these standards and then women needs to follow them? When you talked about social media, let's say, so isn't it like women are going out there, many of them, and then they have their profiles and they try to attract people watching them? And do you think that these are the things that are being said by, for example, men?
I think that they're being said by everyone. I think
Mhm.
women and men are saying these things, and I think that we get confused as to where that conversation has started and where it's ended. And I
Mm.
think that's part of the problem, is that we're actually not really facing the reality of that. So we have
Mhm.
to look at ourselves and face our own reality. Yeah, there are hundreds and thousands of women who are on social media promoting beauty standards, and they're really not looking at that. They're really not looking at how the danger of that, and
Mm.
they're not looking at how that is actually impacting women in general and society, by the way. I don't
Yeah.
think that those unrealistic beauty standards are very good for society as a whole. And I think there are men who get caught up in that conversation. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's very easy to tell where that story starts and ends. It's everywhere. If you look at it, it's all over the place, and we're all responsible for that conversation. So
Okay.
for women, if we can't if we can't value ourselves, we're going to try and find validation externally. We're going to be looking for ways in which to make ourselves acceptable,
Yeah.
because we could. And I think
Okay,
that's
so I think let's just stay there. Yeah, see, the reason I'm asking all these questions, like there's no denial on, and when it comes to certain external powers or forces, I think that they're influencing our lives, no matter if you are men or women. And definitely, I can acknowledge that some of these, the implications of these forces or the existing power dynamics is going to impact different groups within our society differently. And obviously, sex has like is a major factor. And but so I think some of these conversations we're having is, so for example, self-image, yeah, how a person is seeing herself or himself, isn't something that, regardless of sex or gender, people may not have an authentic or congruent understanding of themselves. You think? Do you think that these like self-image problems are specific to women?
no, no, I don't. I think that self-image is self-image. It's a human problem. I
Yeah.
absolutely
Human
think it's a
progress.
huge problem. Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think though that there are specific contexts
Yeah.
to women and their self-image that
Sure.
is important to look at.
Yeah. So as we were talking, like you mentioned, the the reproductive capability of women. Yeah. So and obviously, like if you look into the history, we see that has been a thing, and to the point that sometimes we could see that the totality of the value of a woman would have been unfortunately reduced or degraded only to that reproductive capability. Now, this is not to say that reproductive capability is not a very important thing. It's obviously very important thing. It's quite a unique thing for women, but at the same time, reducing the totality of a person to that has been quite a concern. And I think that that's something that, as I talk to more women, I see that sometimes there is a resentment around that like why I should be letting that to get in the way of my career growth, or like in large when we talk about society today, particularly in the modern societies, we see that there's this kind of an extra value often being given to a career, whatever that's supposed to mean, over, for example, family building. I had conversations with women, some are very close friends, that, for example, we hear this a lot, that when you ask a person, what do you do? They go, "Oh, I'm just a housewife." As if like being a housewife is not a very significant thing. So, do you think that it is fair to say that at some point in the history, we had this kind of force that it would push women to just be that, but then today that women have more choices, and very likely many of women out there, especially in modern societies, they're choosing which lifestyle they want to have. But then the society is going to put pressure on them as if like being a housewife or raising children is going to be less of a thing.
Mm. I absolutely think that there's a lot of pressure on women, and often that pressure
Yeah.
comes from other women or themselves. The pressure's not
Mm-hmm.
just out there. The pressure's not with men. The pressure's,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a general the way society is going, the way society is leading, and we're wanting to. I think there's a fear that we
Yeah.
are generally in society that we won't be providing women with what they need, and that life is changing and women have all these opportunities to go out and work, or have run their own business. And so we've got to kind of get in and make sure that everything is equal and provided to women. And I think that in itself is, there's a danger in that fear,
Yeah.
is that we miss what
Mm.
women can, the opportunity for women to actually powerfully choose what they want for their lives, and then with that choice that they can go out and they can decide, just say they decide that they do want to have children. Some women decide they never want to have children, but if they
Yeah.
do want to have children, then they can then powerfully choose how they bring their child up and how they raise their child. So that opens up much more powerful conversations with those people around them in their lives, in their organizations, in their business. But if we're reducing everything to, with the opportunities for women and equality for women, if we're reducing it to that, I feel that those conversations get missed. I feel like
Yeah.
those conversations just get pushed to the background, and then we just focus on all of those problems, where if we can just see what we've got in front of us, which is the opportunity to powerfully choose. And in that, so if we do choose to have children, then it's our responsibility to to bring those children into the world in the best way that we can, with our partner, in conversation. I hear a lot of women talk about being overwhelmed or being, oh, I'm just a mother, or I'm just a,
Hmm.
a wife or whatever. So I hear them speak about that regularly, and
Yeah,
yet they're very, at the very essence, do they even consider what they're doing is actually being a leader and
yeah,
contributing to society in such a way that they won't even see the impacts of that. They,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, so see, let's elaborate a bit more on like being a leader. I want to ask you a question around that, but in the context of women and them being the leader of their lives. And but let me create a context. Yeah. So what we're discussing basically, I think, so far is there are external pressure on women, on different people in the society, but there are certain pressure that are being there on women specifically. Yeah, one of them has to do with this thing that at some point in the history we had um, um, women to pay so much attention to the reproductive capability that they have, and therefore we risk reducing the totality of the value of a woman as a human being to that aspect of their lives. Yeah, but then we see the other side of the coin, which is like we see that under the name of women empowerment in today's world, they keep pushing this agenda. The certain groups are pushing this certain agenda that, oh, women should be focusing on career. They need to put career first, and basically this makes some women um, that they don't want to make that choice and feel that they are being pressured differently now by the society. Yeah. So, but then down deep there, then when you're talking about leader, like being a leader, not necessarily leader of a team or an organization, but leader of their lives. So, would you tell me what do you mean when you're talking about them being a leader, like around choices?
every day, every single day, you wake up and you get to choose how you have your conversations with people. Every
Hmm.
day, you walk, you get out of bed, you step into your life, and choose. Um, you get to choose your self image. You get to choose, who and how you're being. You get to choose how you want to influence the people around you. That if that's a choice, and that's something that choice is something that comes within, then
Yeah.
you can do that. You can look within you to make that choice.
So basically, like you're saying that at the end of the day, what you envision for women as this coach, leadership coach that you focus on working with women, you want women to have choice. Not you don't want like them being coerced, manipulated, or forced by any of the forces out there, whether they're going to be pushed into this
Yes.
tangent and yeah, so being reduced to their reproductive capability or just building a family and raising kids. At the same time, you don't want to see that they are being pushed despite their innate desire um, to be laser focused on career and become overly industrialized. Is that correct? Like, is that like what you're saying?
Well, they've already got choice. This is the
Mhm.
interesting thing, is that there are distorting
Okay.
forces out, and they're always going to be there. Distorting forces
Yeah.
will be there. So, but the choice is within. So if we're going to powerfully choose, then I think it's important for us to realize that we've actually already got choices. We can make that choice. So we can look at something and the reality of that and choose authentically for ourselves. We don't have to um, be manipulated or controlled by any of the distorting forces out there. And yeah, that's what I think, Ashkan, is that we've got this opportunity for us to say that, well, what if we look at this narrative that's out there right now, and the narrative's telling us that women have to, it's important for women to be powerful and empowered and go into careers. it's how we're actually, what the meaning is that we're making of that lens that we're looking through for us.
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so let me pull these things together and then like take the conversation to another level. I think from here. So basically, like we're saying that we're acknowledging that there've been some external forces, and there may be still that they are forcing everyone, but particularly we're discussing women, to behave or think in a certain manner. But then when we're talking about leadership, your conversation is for women is to have the choice, to have that freedom and choice, and them being of influence when it comes to making critical decisions for their lives, isn't it?
Yep.
That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Okay, so now, so you're contributing into the Being Matters book, which is a compilation book. So like we're contextualizing the being discourse in multiple different areas of our life for different people, different groups within our society, and you're laser focused on women. So um, now, so you mentioned awareness, and that's one of the things that we talk about. Yeah. So what this awareness means when we're talking about women, if if a person is not present to the fact that they do have choices, and there are these external forces that are trying to coerce them, manipulate them, or push them towards a certain direction. So what does this awareness means in that context then?
Well, in that context, awareness means that we are able to discern for ourselves when something is, when we're being influenced, or when there's a chance that we could be influenced by external factors, by distorting forces. We're able to see that. And we're also able to have a look at ourselves as a human being and go, well, how am I being influenced by that, like by that thing? And is that really what I want for my life? So we can actually discern that. That's what awareness is, being able to sort of take a step back and sit back and in really recognizing who we are and how we want to take ourselves out into the world. Being
Mhm.
able to see the difference. Am I being influenced here? Or is this really what I want?
So now, so when it comes to, see, we as human beings, and I understand that you're focusing on working with women, but do you think that, like, when we talk about autonomy, when we talk about responsibility, when we talk about freedom, particularly now you're discussing about discussing choices, yeah? Do you think that we are the only ones who are setting our own priorities, or and there are times that we need to surrender to certain things?
Yeah, there are times when we need to surrender to certain things. And I think, particularly, one of those times is when it comes to the time that in our lives where we are, we've got little people we have to look after.
Yeah.
That's one of those times that we have to surrender. When we're in
Mhm.
partnership with other people, there's a certain amount of surrender within a
Mhm.
partnership with somebody else. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Because see, like there is this shadow side to freedom, which
Mm.
is like, yes, you have so many different options, and particularly in today's world, like people in general, and particularly now we're talking about women, like they have all different choices to make. But the question is whether these choices we make um, are serving us. Are they contributing to the overall integrity of our life or not? And that's, I think, where some part of the confusion is sitting, Jeanette.
Mm.
When we're talking about awareness, you're talking about awareness, I think, and then you touch on the word discernment. I think um, being able to discern the differences between these different choices or options that we have is extremely important. I think a part of that confusion for everyone, and now we're discussing women, so let's mainly talk about women. I think a big part of that confusion is coming from like having so many different choices, and that freedom of choice and so many options available is somehow causing a level of paralysis. isn't it?
Mm, mm. Yeah.
Or leading them to make decisions uh, that they're not necessarily compatible. Yeah. So, for example, if a person really wants to have a lucrative corporate career, at the same time wants to have like 5, 6 children, so this has always been a kind of a challenge. Now, sometimes politically, it's not in a politically correct way to go close to that, because some people get very uncomfortable around this. But we see that like there's tremendous amount of issues when it comes to childcare at the moment, in Australia. Yeah, how do you see that? Um, do you like how do you go about that
Uh,
when some of these decisions may not be fully compatible?
yeah, it's really tricky, isn't it? Because see, I before when my children were really little, I owned a business,
Yeah.
right? And I know it was tough. It was really tough because I had to make some difficult decisions of
Hmm.
when I was there with them and when I wasn't there with them and so forth.
Yeah.
Um, but I think if that's what you're talking about, if we're talking about the conflicts that we have within ourselves as to when we're or the choices that we've got to make, then I
Yeah.
think we do need to. It's important for us to sort of take a step back and see what our where our values lie as well. And
Yeah.
if we want to, um, if we're willing to be out, if we're willing to give up so much in order to go down this path, then what are we leaving behind, and are we comfortable with that? And
Yeah.
so I think for a lot of women, they struggle with that. They struggle with those decisions, and then they don't feel that freedom within them.
Yeah,
They can
and
feel quite,
see, Jeanette, like this is not just about women, that's quite an important thing for men as well. At the core of conservative view, yeah, not that I'm a conservative person or not conservative. I don't want to play these labels, but just to describe it as at the core part of a conservative views around, like, let's say, family. Yeah, you need a family, or in general, like there's this thing that the everything was chaos, and we managed to put some sort of order in place, yeah, so that we have a degree of workability and integrity going on. Now, this is status quo, the current order, whatever it is, and does that have so many different problems? Yes. Is in part oppressive, when it comes to men, women, different people, different groups of people? Yes, it is. But what's the solution to that? The solution to that is like to identify these problems, prioritize them, discuss them, and then see how we can manage to fix them one by one, spread it over, uh, like the wide variety of experts and specialists to support fixing the problem. But we cannot revolutionize it. We cannot just dig whatever it's there and then throw out old traditions and build something from scratch. Yeah. But on the other side, like, a opposite to the conservative view is, no, you know what, this thing that we have, it's not working. Yeah. And more focusing on the parts that doesn't work, and they go, okay, so what's the solution? Like, let's throw it out, trump it, and then recreate something. And often this recreation of this substrate that we're going to then build things on top of, very likely it's going to create different types of problems again. Yeah, that's why not necessarily revolutions really work in a political sense, because like certain other people with certain new political ideology, they jump in and they think uh, that they have a complete theory of everything. We go and we want to put it in place. If they manage to put it in place properly as they wish, but then again, like we see that certain other types of problems that are going to come up. So now, so coming back to the point, the discussion we were having around women. So let me just ask, um, the more direct questions. So, for example, like if there's this couple and they are both working, they are both quite career driven, and they decide to have 4 kids. Yeah. So, what do you think that in the current climate in our society, that how does that work? Like they negotiate and then go, okay, I'll take care of the kids this way and that way. But how about like in the beginning, from giving birth to, being with the baby for a certain amount of time? And so, how does that going to work if, for example, a person is going to have a lucrative corporate career, being so at the top of like at the peak of the hierarchy in the corporate.
Mm. Well, I
Yeah.
personally don't think that I think the idea of going into a corporate world, or the idea of building a particular um, family life, or a particular, you want to build a home for
Mm,
yourself, you want to build, I think the financial conversations will off and the financial conversations and the career conversations will often come before anything else.
mm,
So I don't necessarily agree that we're all really considered and measured in our conversations around that.
mm,
Because in
yeah.
society, we're so focused on what we can achieve, and
Mm,
what our status, and what we want our house to look like, and you know what family holidays we want to go on. And
yeah.
so that's where I think we then end up in conflict with ourselves, because we can on one hand be really happy with the way our career is going, and really happy with, oh, we're making enough money to finance our bank loan for our house.
Mm,
Oh, we're doing really well there. But then on the other hand, we can just be at home and be in chaos and be overwhelmed.
yeah.
And so I actually don't know that it always does work very well at all, because we can, when, and some people can do this very well, when we ignore the other factors that are there to be taken seriously, like how we're going
Yeah.
to, choices that we have around how we're going to parent these children together, and
Yeah.
what opportunities we want to create for them, how they fit into the picture of our life, and all kinds of things. So I think it doesn't always happen very, very well. And I think that's where conflict starts and ends. It's right there, in that
Yeah.
we can very much ignore, and this is where awareness comes in, we can very much ignore
Yeah.
certain aspects that are there to look at. And
Mm,
if we're looking at, just for just one example, if we really want to build a nice big shiny house, and we really want to make sure that we're sort of keeping up with the Joneses, or we,
mm,
we're building a nest egg for ourselves, we've got to look at the reality of that. Have to look
mm,
at, is that actually really something that we really want? And if we do, what do we have to give up in order to get
yeah.
that thing, that shiny
Yeah. It
object?
goes back to their priorities and value
It goes,
structure.
it goes back to priorities and value structure. And I look, I don't disagree that women should have careers. I don't have an opinion on that, because I actually think that, women and men can both choose really powerfully to do it the way they want to do it. But I don't necessarily
Mm,
think we're always doing that, choosing powerfully.
yeah. So in one hand, we have this kind of a traditional way of going about like the institution of family, the structure of the family. For example, like the man being the provider, and then the woman, like more uh, prioritizing the household and the kids, and at least for a certain amount of time. On the other side, then we have this other ideology, and I'm using my word deliberately. So we have this other ideology that in a neoliberalistic society that goes, no, like it should not be like that. What it should be like is like you both go to work from the morning all the way to 6 p.m., and you need to prioritize your career, because career is the most important thing you have. You need to that's your social status. That's the means for you to earn money, and then the more money you have, the better it is, the more access you have to things, the more options you have. Now here, like if you really want to have like a family, then that's fine. Take it as a burden, and spread it equally, so that then you can manage to have the kids growing there for themselves as well. And that is what is happening basically in our society. Yeah, yes, there are issues that I agree, um, with the completely traditional way of looking at that. But at the same time, this new ideology that is being injected, to the point that we're making policies around it, we're creating laws and everything around that as if it's already in place. And you know that there's resistance against it. At the same time, there are certain forces that they are so actively promoting that. But the question is it even working? Is it working? Is it contributing to the integrity of people's life, the families there?
Mm,
So
mm.
now going back to the leadership conversation. So again, like your conversation is by supporting women to be of influence, be in charge of the and be aware of the choices that they are making, make the decisions with discernment, then it's going to make the life better. Is that what you say?
Yeah, in essence, I'm
Okay.
saying that because, yeah, I am, and I'm also aware that there are a lot of distorting forces out there. There are a lot of narratives, and there are a lot of gender narratives still in force
Yeah.
and in play today that are having women try and look perfect or be a certain way, or the beauty lens for one is that young women in particular, and I guess it's a little bit different as you get older. I know for you can definitely change as you get older, but there is a lens through which we look at, and it's infiltrated into society, into
Yeah.
marketing, into big businesses are all still playing that narrative. And
Mm,
many women are falling prey to that narrative and are still what they're doing then as a result is not undervaluing who they are innately and
yeah.
allowing that narrative to sort of dictate the value
Mm,
and how we see ourselves. So that narrative is the skinny lens that we look through. And young children are subjected to this as well, by the way. Lots of
mm,
young children are. Now, I'm not saying that just women are subjected to this, because there are a lot of men with body image problems. But the
yeah.
way that it is injected into society for women is it's what it does is it tends to collapse our value. It just sort of reduces our value to our looks, or to our the way our body looks and the way our face looks and all kinds of things. It reduces it. And so, but we're allowing that. Women are also in there allowing that, because they're out there going, well, I can't be confident. Um, I can't be courageous. I can't be assertive, and I can't. So it's kind of, women are just sort of judging themselves against these standards. And I know so many women, and women in business for themselves, who have
Mm.
got some great ideas, really great ideas, and they could be contributing so well to society, but they're holding themselves back. Not
So what do you
fully.
think the solution to that is?
I don't think there's one solution to that, Ashkan. I really don't. But I think overall, um, is that we have to have more conversations with women about who their value that they already have. So if we were to flip it on its head and say our value is within us and it's not external to us, how does the conversation then change? What happens then? How do women see themselves? See, I asked a group of women the other day, how do you relate to yourself?
Yeah.
And they just all sat back and just, wow. And then next question was, how do you relate to your value?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then they started saying things like, I see myself through the eyes of my children.
Yeah.
I see myself through the lens of being a wife. and they started to
mm,
talk about all the roles that they have, the roles. So so when we do that, when we reduce women and men, by the way, to certain
yeah,
roles, we take away, we forget, or we ignore, or we can't see the
yeah,
inequalities that are there.
yeah. Yeah, so I totally can get it. Like, so this is the way, like, sometimes we see throughout the history, men have been reduced to their labor. Yeah, so at times we see most men as disposable beings.
Mm.
At the same time, like we had tremendous amount of evidences throughout the history that we've objectified women, and still we do in different forms. And so these are the issues that are there. And like from a philosophical perspective, from my end, is I don't necessarily categorize people into multiple different categories in order for um, me to care about them in a sense. Yeah. So for me, it's more humanity. But now I understand the value in being focused to address certain problems that mostly a certain group of people would dealing with, and that's basically why. I think that the work that you're doing in contextualizing some of these conversations we're having um, um, in tailored in such a way that it resonates with women is extremely important. Now, so let's go to the next conversation that you actually touch on it in the book chapter um, that you are working on, assertiveness. Yeah. So now we discussed so far, we discussed that there are certain systematic issues that you see, there are certain forces within the society that they bring that social pressure, particularly to women. As we discussed, we talked about like the traditional way of looking at like what would be the value of women obviously is there, and it had quite a good number of issues. Um, and then on the other side, the solution that is being proposed by certain group of people from political parties all the way to what is being pushed into media, et cetera, in order for luring women towards certain way in this neoliberalistic society that we have. Everything is being measured by um, monetary tokens, or you mentioned like certain societal constructs, um, how women are being seen. But in the midst of all this confusion, yeah, and I think that if I put myself in the shoes of a woman, a young lady that is basically trying to say, okay, so where should I put my priorities on? Should I go and then put more time in dating the right person because I want to build family, or should I go and then focus, be laser focused on career? How, or if I want to do both at the same time, how I can manage to spread my energy, like so I can see that this can be a source of massive confusion for everyone, but now we're discussing women particularly. So now in this context, I think, as we've mentioned, and then you brought it up, awareness matters, the discernment to tell the difference between these different options matters, because ultimately it's the combinations of the sequence of these decisions that the individual is going to make is going to make it or break it at the end of the day. It's going to manifest itself in the results that are going to produce. Yeah. So now, in that context, then assertiveness. Yeah, you talk about assertiveness. We talk about assertiveness in general here, but when it comes to women, what do you see? Where is this unhealthy relationship with assertiveness can manifest itself? Are
Mm.
they being too agreeable? Uh, I'm asking you, as this coach who constantly you work with women. Yeah,
Yeah.
do you think that there is um, this kind of being overly agreeable, and then that's going to lead to resentment or dissatisfaction for them?
Yes. Yes. 100%. So, so, what I see is that they will often accept anything that's thrown at them. That women will often accept anything that's thrown at them. So let me give you an example. Just say a woman goes into a meeting with her boss, and the boss starts having a go at her because she hasn't lived up to his expectations or whatever. So, in what she'll do, what I see, particularly with my clients, is that they will often try and sort of temper their response. So instead of being able to just be there, being direct and firm and clear, and also decide that they've got input into this conversation, they'll sit back and think about it and take it in or take it on as though it's a problem they have to fix, and then go away afterwards, and then want to come back into the next conversation, but they, in doing that, they're trying to sort of manipulate how that conversation goes because they don't want to upset the other person. So there's this level of making sure that they can keep the peace,
Yeah.
right? Because, yeah, we're told to be nice, we're told to be good
Mm,
girls, and we don't like to think that we're going to come across in a way that is going to upset someone. And I think that we could talk
yeah.
about that forever, but that's, we tend to believe that we've got this nurturing element to us, and that it's important. That nurturing element means that we mustn't upset people. So it's how we're
Yeah. Yeah.
relating to ourselves as women.
Sometimes, um, when we live life from this viewpoint that life is occurring to us and we are this passive victim to life instead of an active agent, and it's the circumstances that are
Mm.
shaping our life, our experience of life, rather than I am the one who can manage to influence the circumstances as much as possible. And especially like you mentioned, for example, girls are being told to be nice, whatever that's supposed to mean. And by the way, like I mean, in today's world, particularly, like boys are also being told that they need to be nice, whatever that's supposed to mean. Yeah, but and that can sit there in their subconscious, and as we grow up, if we don't intervene, and we polish that aspect of being and become more assertive or developing a healthy relationship with assertiveness, obviously it can have a tremendous amount of um, negative impact on what we want to achieve.
Well, see, here's the thing. If if we're nice, if we think that we have to be nice, right? What will happen is that even the we're gonna we don't really want to be nice. I'm going to be really honest here. We don't want to be nice all the time, and so we might be nice in action, but sit with a resentment in the background. And that resentment can really throw us into trying to control or trying to
Yeah.
manipulate the
Oh.
outcome. But there, make no
Mm,
mistake, the women in the background, there is this conversation going on that
yeah.
that is, if you're being overly nice here, you still got this conversation going on that I resent what's happened to me.
Of course.
And so
Of course.
therefore I'm going to try and control or manipulate this. And that could be, right, I'm going to pull away from this relationship, right, I'm not going to have anything to do with them anymore. Even that
Yeah.
is trying to control the outcome. So I think
Yes,
it's
yes. And this is the thing that often is referred to as toxicity. They talk about toxic masculinity, or it can be like toxic femininity. But or if you remove this femininity or masculinity out of it, that toxicity it shows itself. Yes, maybe certain group of people we develop more tendency to be submissive or overly agreeable. But as you mentioned, they may be in pretense, or they may just give you the yes or no that you want, but then down deep there, they're not going to commit to whatever is being said with grace, and carry that resentment. So, and
mm,
then they may So that toxicity or unhealthy relationship with assertiveness in this particular case, as you mentioned, it may show itself in gossip, in manipulation, in sneaking in a way. So yeah, but so now how about the other side? Like if a person, because then this is one of the things that we often see: a person who's been nice, or acted nice, or acted a nice persona, um, um, she gets to this point at, I mean, she gets to this state at some point, and we see that quite a lot. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you've experienced it as well in your coaching sessions, and that this person goes, you know what, enough is enough, and I want to be assertive. Now, but then that assertiveness, I mean, that what they may mean by being assertive, it actually flips to the other side, and it may turn to aggression. Yeah. So what do you have to say about that? How does
Yeah,
that, you know?
well, it often does turn to aggression because you see, if you haven't been able or to say get your point of view across, or you haven't found a way to get your point of view across, but you've got a point of view, you've got an opinion that you want to share, but there's somehow, in some way, you haven't been able to express that, or you haven't thought that expressing that is available to you, or whatever that is, then of course there's a tendency to be aggressive, especially if whatever it is that you want to say, or whatever it is that you have an opinion around, really matters to you. And if it really matters to you, and then you haven't been able to influence the outcome, of course there's a potential that you will be aggressive and
Yeah,
controlling and dominating, or trying to manipulate the outcome, right?
yeah,
It's the ability for that is always there,
yeah. So you have
always
a
sitting.
point of view, you have an opinion,
Yep.
you want to say your real yeses and nos. You want to be this person who is the one who's making the decision for her life. But then if that opportunity is not given to you, or to be exact, you're not creating that opportunity for yourself. Yeah, because see, that's one of the problem that I would have, that often in this buzzword of empowering women is like, that's actually very sometimes condescending or patronizing, as if like women are not enough and we need to give them an extra hand so that they can, you know,
Yeah.
generate the same result that men would generate. But I
Yeah.
mean, so being this person, as you said, being that leader of your life, being of influence and in charge, and with awareness, with discernment, to actually identify what is it that you want to communicate, what is it that you want to express, what is it, that decision that you have, that choice that you want to make, and then relating to yourself as this active agent who can actually empower
Mm.
and have the power to say the thing that is there for them, to be heard, to say the real yeses and nos,
Mm-hmm.
to make the decision that you want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But
Yep.
then the almost sole responsibility of that, whether you're a man or a woman, would be on you. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
And that is the thing that I think, if
But
we can manage to communicate this to people, and that's
well,
part of the message with the work that we do here. And now, like you mostly work with women, obviously, and it manifests itself in a certain way. So how do you support, like, how do you support the women that you work with to get
mm,
to that stage, Jeanette?
yeah,
That
good
state.
point.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, when you are in that state, when you are choosing, then everything changes. You are literally, what you want to ask people, and you ask it. You are very aware in the background that you have a tendency to say yes more than you say no, for example. So if you are bringing awareness to that, then immediately there's freedom for you, because then you can choose. So it's when you don't think that you've got that free, when you don't think that you've got the choice, when you're looking away and you're just not knowing what your real yeses are and your real nos are, then it's going to be much harder for you. So the work that I do is in really looking what at the women and what they're choosing for themselves, and whether that those choices are very conscious, whether they're very aware of what they're choosing. So for example, one woman that I worked with, she wanted to work in an organization, and she really believed in this organization, and so she just wanted to do the work in there. And she was offered this role within this organization, and she actually didn't even know what the role was going to be. And she didn't stop long enough to ask. She just felt that she was valued enough to be asked to do the role. And so she just said, yes, I'll do it. And then
Mm,
afterwards realized, oh my gosh, there's too much. I can't do this. I can't take on
mm.
all of this at the same time as trying to build my business, etc. So she was really struggling to, because she hadn't stopped long enough in the first place to
Yeah,
be able to
yeah.
ask the questions and be assertive enough to, or even own her value enough.
I would like to add here, if you don't mind. So I
Yeah,
think this is where vulnerability comes in. Sometimes due to that lack of awareness, or sometimes because we're in this position, and then we're being given a task, and an expectation is being set for us, but then we're not going to say no. Why? Because you go, oh, is that if I say no, then I'm going to be seen as this woman who is not capable of doing this. Therefore, no matter what, I need to put whatever pressure on myself and be this super human being, superwoman, and take all these things on me, and they go and they suffer through that, and then their experience of life is going to turn into this burden they need to carry. Yeah, and then you do it once, second, twice, third time in your life, and then it becomes a pattern, and then yeah, so you're not going to really enjoy life and the things in it. Yeah. So that's exactly like where I think the value of being assertive comes in, without falling from the other side and becoming this aggressive, resentful, bitter human being. And that often we see. Yeah. Now, so you end almost you end your chapter in the book talking about being true to yourself. Again, like that's another kind of a buzzword. Like there's a lot of conversation around authenticity and being true to yourself. But what does that mean in this context? What do you mean by being true to yourself? Is that like not being in this pretense, not fooling yourself? What is it that you mean in this
yeah, exactly
context?
that. Not fooling yourself. Not fooling yourself.
Mm,
It's so easy to fool yourself into thinking that the decisions that you're making are um, are yours, and when actually the decisions you're making are based on what society thinks that you should do or should be. So I think being true to yourself is about being able to come back to yourself and authentically be honest with yourself as to the choices that you're making, Ashkan, because they're there for you to make. Um, so being true to yourself is also about looking at
yeah,
understanding that you do have value already, getting that you've got a value within you. Just by
mm,
being born, you're valuable. And
yeah,
so you being true to yourself is not being caught up
mm,
in all of the rhetoric that's going on, and all of the, it's
yeah.
being able to
What's the trend? And yeah,
what's,
because
yeah,
see, at the end of the day, I think the thing is, if you manage to fool yourself, and we often do, then we lose respect for ourselves, and then you're not going to be because you're the one who down deep there knows beyond all that pretense. You may be in pretense and project this kind of an exaggerated different persona out there, and then you may fool certain people out there with unequipped eyes. But then in your solitude, when you're sitting there, you cannot fool yourself. And if you manage to fool yourself, then you're going to lose respect. and that can be source of way bigger problems as it comes. And not only you're going to suffer, you're going to also cause suffering for other people involved in your decisions.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Any final um, thing that you want to tell our audience?
Yeah. I think that I think, look, innately women know when they're letting distorting forces get in their way. They know. Everyone knows. Humans know,
Mm,
because it doesn't
yeah.
feel good. It feels uncomfortable within you, in your body. You feel it. You feel a bit like, oh, I don't. This decision that I've made, or this thing that I didn't say that I should have said, it's there for me to say, but we can very quickly go on and blame
Mm,
ourselves and get into the conversation around all of the shoulds. I should have been this. I should have been that. I and those
mm,
expectations, I think, don't serve us. I think what
yeah.
serves us is to just get back to yourself and what you want for your life, and be real about that. Just bring reality to who and how you're being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeanette. I hope that our audience enjoyed the conversation. And we'll put the details of you, like if they want to reach out and know more about the work that you do. And I've already mentioned that you've contributed into the Being Matters series of book with your chapter around the contextualizing some part of the being framework discussion in how women can leverage that. And that's an unpublished book at this stage, but soon is going to be out there. So for you guys, if you find the conversation valuable and you want to read a bit more, you contact Jeanette, or going through the links that I'm putting it on the description, and be in touch. Thank you very much, Jeanette, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Ashkan.